Thank you for the introduction. This particular panel, we'll be focusing on resilient supply chains and on taking a connected approach in this regard. We have some expert panelists, some of the best and noted personalities and stakeholders and partners in the ecosystem. Uh, the critical part or the critical aspect with regarding to supply chains and value chains in this context is with regarding to uh, optimizing the value chain in terms of ensuring that the platform, that the FPO platform would serve as an effective integration platform with regard to forward as well as backward linkages. Now, based on typical service providers or resource institutions, interventions in the field, you would find that a typical marginal and small farmer would be spending between maybe about 60,000 rupees to about 1,20,000 rupees every year farming is on in terms of input procurement for his farmland of 2 acres, 2 or 2.5 acres. And this is regardless of whether they are into cereals and pulses, that is food crops, or whether they are into horticulture. Horticulture is likely to be more, cereals and crops less, 60,000. Now, in this context, with regarding to inputs, optimization would mean eliminating rent-seeking middlemen. It will involve direct procurement by FPOs, capacity building in this context, etc. If you look at the market connect, a major focus of interventions across the country with regard to FPOs in the market front is to provide them alternate market linkages, not one particular buyer, but a range of buyers. Because as we all know, contract farming has never really materialized in India due to various reasons. No need to elaborate on that. Fixation of price is an impossible task. So everything else is fine. Quality, delivery, transfer of good agricultural practices, mutual trust relationship. But price is something that very difficult to pose in a contract with regard to agri commodity. This also is with regarding to cereals or with food crops or with regard to horticulture. So in this context, what we need to understand from our experts is that how do we ensure that this initiative of forward and backward integration very effectively strengthening FPOs on these two fronts will be facilitated? What are the kind of instruments that could be implemented and are being implemented now across the country? And how can we learn and develop these further? So let us start off with Alinji, Aleen Mukherjee, who's CEO of NCDX. Extensive services across the nation, I'm sure with hundreds of FPOs, NCDX already working, though we do not have the figures. We have one question, Alimji, initially. How many FPOs in India is the NCDX services being availed of on a regular basis by FPOs? How many of them and which particular locations, if there is a concentration at all? Next one is, what degree of an FPO farmer's output or volume of production, a typical farmer, typical groups, output is normally transacted through NCDX. This and the third major aspect also in this context is, how is NCDX orienting and training FPOs as to onboard them onto the platform?
Okay.
Alinji.
Namaskar, everyone. Thank you very much for having me on here with this esteemed panelist. बहुत धन्यवाद. And thank you, ETH and Samunnati, for organizing the second. I remember being part of the first one as well. So honored to be here. So quite a longish questions on three fronts. So the first of all, of course, within our exchange, we have almost more than 300 such farmer producer organizations who are part of NCDX family. When I say family, is that we have the clearing and settlement part, the electronic negotiable warehouse receipt system, and if we also include NEML, which is our spot market platform, then the number is pretty large. So a lot of these farmer producer organizations are taking assistance or gaining alternate market from these institutions. Specifically on the exchange platform, we have more than 300 of them who has registered as a client with us. Almost 100, more than 50% of them actually have traded. That means hedged or used exchange platform as a market platform. Market के हिसाब से इस्तेमाल किया उन्होंने. Or if we talk about the quantum, more than 50,000 tons has been traded on the platform. Yes, volume wise, If you look at the production to volume ratio, trade ratio, then it's not much. But we also have to understand exchange works as a price discovery mechanism. So this gives a price indication which assists this FPOs and farmers to negotiate further with their buyers. The third is that the last year has been actually quite good, even with the pandemic. So, and actually with pandemic, because then people and farmers and FPOs realized and they understood that how important is to have a transparent marketplace without worrying about the buyer or ensuring that money coming back to their account. Because in your opening statement you did mention, pricing becomes a crucial factor, alternate market needs to be present, and even if you find an alternate market, how do you ensure or generate confidence amongst the farmers that they will get their money? So so this marketplace, the NCDX marketplace, actually takes care of all those aspects. If you look at very closely, yes, not necessarily for the horticultural crop or any other, let's say, allied aspects of agriculture in terms of, let's say, fisheries or milk. But if you look at cereal, grains, spices, so there is a whole lot of basket, almost 24 commodities, which covers our 70% of our grain economy. And spice economy can be covered under through this platform. So this market allows you to fix price, which you has raised as a concern, that how do you fix prices. So this market allows you to fix price. So that means your revenue are reasonably fixed because you know your cost of production. आप पहले से उसको fix कर सकते हैं. Secondly, you don't have to worry about your buyer because there is a counterparty, which is the exchange platform and the clearing and settlement which is involved. तो आपका पैसा जो है डायरेक्ट आपके बैंक अकाउंट में आ जाता है at the time of settlement. Yes, as any market, there are certain rules, there are certain guidelines which needs to be understood and grasped. So for that, we go out and meet the FPOs, their resource institutions or entities who have promoted them. We work very closely with the NABARD and SFSC promoted institutions, the local officers, even the Krishi Vigyan Kendras in some cases where they have promoted farmer producer organizations. And interestingly, what had happened over a period of time is that there are quite a few FPOs who have matured enough, to take part on their own now. They take the price decisions because they don't have to worry about the terms of the trade, which is already laid out in a contract, right? Quality kya hoga, delivery kahan karni hai, kis tarike se karni hai, what kind of packaging you need to require, what kind of certification, quality certification is also there. So all those things are taken care. You just have to ensure that your materials are ready for that quality, you deliver on the exchange, and you at a particular date and time during settlement, you get your money. So the terms of the trades are clean, the monetary aspects are well known, so the farmers and FPOs can actually take a much better informed decision and find an alternate market. So our training methodology is of course on one-on-one with farmer producer organizations, their board of directors, and we do of course last year because of pandemic we did mostly virtual, but generally we reach out to their location. We also take them to the warehouse to show them how the goods are stored, usko assaying kaise hota hai. And we also help out ki maal deposit karne se pehle you send us a sample, we get it tested to see whether the samples are will pass or not. So we do all such hand holding from making them aware, from training them, and also helping them through the process till they at least go through the whole cycle couple of times. And but one aspect is that you need much more focus, much more spread to reach out to more number of people to teach them this particular aspects of the marketplace. So I will take a pause here. I think I have responded to your first.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Alinji. Let's move on to Akashji. Akashji from Farmlay. So Akashji, you're into nuts, dry fruits, seed spices also. What are your requirements in terms of vendor registration, traceability norms, and more important, volumes and delivery terms with regarding to sourcing from FPOs? If you could throw some light on this, please.
Sure. No, so thanks a lot, first of all, Parmanji, for having me here, and thank you everyone for being a part of this panel. So broadly, just taking a minute to kind of, briefing about what we do at Farmlay. So we are essentially not procuring, only from the farmers and only kind of, doing one part of the entire supply chain, or not specifically probably just focusing upon brand building in some of the niche commodities. We basically come and want to become a part of that supply chain, which has been largely untapped, which has largely been unseen till in the country till now. So out of the entire food basket that that is there, there's a small pie of that basket, including some of the spices, nuts, dry fruits, like you said, some of millets, some of the very niche commodities which have been completely untapped. The entire supply chain from farm to even the wholesale market is completely essentially absent. Now, in this supply chain, one very interesting part is that whatever produce is taken by the farmer, it is actually not consumed in the wholesale market or by the customer in the same format. It needs to undergo some level of primary level processing so that it can essentially come into a form which can actually be consumed by the end consumer. Now, with this kind of a supply chain, what becomes imperative is that any farmer who is essentially kind of working in any of these commodities, I'll take one example of the commodity that we do, which is makhana, which is foxnuts. Now, any farmer which is actually, in the harvest cycle or kind of producing these goods, if they keep on doing it in the same fashion that they have been doing in the past 20 years, there's a very broad level mandi dictated pricing that they have, and they'll probably keep kind of getting those pricing. Even if someone kind of procures them directly from them, the value addition might not be very humongous. I'm talking about value additions in the tunes of 20, 25, 30% in terms of the margins that the farmers can potentially, or the FPOs can potentially earn even further, right? Now, what happens is when we basically go to these FPOs, we tell them two things. If how to produce qualities that are basically in lines with what the market is demanding, right? So what inputs to use in order to do that, what farming practices to do, how much farmland to use, which type of farmland to use, so that the final output quality that is actually being produced using the same setup, using the same, let's say, 100 rupee of raw input, how do you maximize the output value that you're essentially getting? And that can only be maximized if you basically improve the quality of the output. So we basically kind of enhance the FPOs, and we work very closely with the board of directors. We work with entrepreneurs in the FPOs who can drive this quality building aspect in the FPOs, so that there is no very similar a small time duration of profit building for FPOs. This profit building actually goes on for decades, because now they are fundamentally producing much better qualities of outputs which can fetch them better pricing, and that's the economics of the market. So you are not even kind of ditching and kind of going away from the market. That is one. The second part is where we basically enable them to have some level of primary processing infrastructure at their own end. So we work with these FPOs, and whichever FPO is willing, and we have, of course, some tie-ups with some good NBFC partners, including Sammunati, to kind of finance such FPOs in terms of the basic level of machineries which they can kind of have at their place, and this even very slightest level of value addition in the raw input can essentially fetch much higher outputs for them. In terms of registration compliances, it's a very simple, kind of process. Anybody who wants to register with us, there's a quality and audit team. We basically go to this FPO. We work very closely with this FPO in setting all the quality standards, compliances. We help them get the FSSAI certifications. We help them get ISO certifications. We help them in all the enablement so that they are able to produce a good for which they can essentially get a much better, commercial value.
Thank you, Akash ji. We'll come back to you again. Now, Jasmeer ji from Landscapes. Jasmeer ji, could we have a good global or national success story of FPO and effective trade related linkages and entrenchment to global value chains?
Sure. Thank you for that. And just at the outset, at IDH and through our FarmFit programs, we do work with a large number of buyers and traders who do engage with FPOs as suppliers to them. The question is also, how do they engage with them? Are the models in which they engage, are they rewarding for both? Are they sustainable for both? And because we definitely have a large number of experiences from India at the summit and also on the panel, I will pick up a very, I guess, simple and effective example that we have from one particular trader processor we're working with in the cashew sector in Africa, actually in Burkina Faso. And the name of the organization is as Anatrans. And their entire business model is based on working with FPOs. So they started working with individual farmers, sourcing from individual farmers, but they realized very quickly that the scalability lies in working with FPOs. And how do they do this? So the first thing they do is when they start to engage with new FPOs, when they are buying raw cashew nuts from FPOs, they track or they try to understand what is the current quantity, quality, that they're getting in terms of cashews from the FPOs, but also what is some of the other parameters like the timeliness of the delivery that's coming in from the FPO. Now, with this information, what they're able to do is from the entire base that they engage with, they actually segment the FPOs, right? So they, sort of categorize them into a star 1, 2, 3 based on a few criteria. And the whole idea of doing this, which they do really well, the segmentation of the FPOs they work with, is so that they can actually tailor better services to each of these FPOs to strengthen them and to make them a more integral part of their supply chain. So if you think about it, with all the FPOs they work with, all the farmers and the FPOs receive the base level of services. Farmer training, capacity building, some form of commercial, assistance. And then additional services from Anatrans to those FPOs are added on after they start, crossing, step 1, step 2, become 2-star, 3-star, etc. Once they reach a minimum level of quantity, quality, timeliness, formal professional management, they are offered additional services like how to diversify, in their business model, or the ability, as Akash was also referring to, in terms of how to tap into higher premium markets, move into, more certified products, basically tapping into more value in those supply chains. And I think this is the key element, so it's more about the process that they followed, this idea of segmenting so that you can better understand the needs and then tailor how you engage with FPOs as a buyer and trader is something that they did really well. And maybe just to sort of sum up quickly and come back to, well, what did the FPO get from this, right? So they engaged with 10 and 12 FPOs in a year. What did they get? I think one aspect that was reported back from several of the FPO partners is that by becoming or helping them become more and more professional, tapping into more services, more markets, that same value was naturally translated to their farmer members, right? And I think that's the most important element. The second part is, again, helping them on their professionalization journey also meant that they could take away some of those commercial burdens or commercial responsibilities from Anatrans themselves, which means, again, as an FPO, they were giving themselves a greater position in terms of value in the supply chain. Right? So if you take away some of that from the trader and take it on, then you yourself are providing more for value to the trader. And for Anatrans, now, if you look at it as a trader perspective, what do they get? Right? So how did they benefit? They actually reported a 4 times increase in sourcing between 4 years that they engaged on this model. They also reported that they were able to reduce their cost of sourcing because they were able to support the FPOs to become more viable supporters, suppliers, to them. And in a way, their end objective, which is to create a more reliable supply, a more quality supply, and a more stronger relationship, with their suppliers, in this case, the FPOs, those are their core objectives. If you think of a trader or think of a processor, right? What does a processor want to do? They want to stick to their core business and process. So really, by strengthening the FPOs, they were also able to reduce their costs of sourcing, build stronger relationships, and also focus on their core work. Right? So in that case, that's a win-win for both Anatrans and a few of the FPOs they work with.
Yeah.
And I think we can definitely have a lot of replication of these models, both in different parts of India and other programs we work with.
Thank you, Jasmeet ji. One more quick question. Ladies always have our priority. Do the FPOs in Africa, do they pay income tax?
So
We
it
have a
depends.
5-year holiday, So how is it there? We have a 5-year holiday now, but
Yes.
unfortunately, every FPO has to pay a MAT. 18% goes every year.
Yeah.
And we are lobbying with the government to remove that too, based on global studies. How is it in Africa? Do
Well,
they
it
have a permanent? Yeah, please.
Yeah, it does depend on the maturity of the FPO, and like in India, the types of registrations differ. So definitely it depends on the scale, again, turnover and those aspects, which also kick in the same sort of regulations as to whether you come under a tax purview or not. It's also different across different African countries, so it will be quite difficult to generalize. But yes, if you're operating at a very large farmer base, a very high turnover, then yes, most likely you also do come under some form of tax, but
Sure.
not probably at very high rates. Yeah.
Thank you, Ji. Now we'll move on to Kalidas Ji for the first round. Coromandel, one of the leading fertilizer suppliers also in the nation. I assume other than, say, Yara to an extent and maybe IFCO, the Coromandel would be the third player that any service provider links up with an FPO. So there's not much competition. So Coromandel, how are you differentiated from these? Coromandel, how is Coromandel differentiated from the other players when dealing with FPOs? The first question. And also, how do you handle, how do you decide on target locations where you are willing to disrupt your own supply chains while supplying to FPOs directly? Over to you, Kalidas ji.
Thank you, Mr. Padmanabhan, and thanks for being part of this discussion. First of all, I would like to say that FPOs are the capability building in our supply chain. We don't look at separately, right? And when we are talking about agri supply chains and resilience of agri supply chains, what does it mean by resilience? Resilience means that you should have the capacity to provide continuous support services, solution to our farmers, despite whatever the challenges or disturbances comes into your way, right? So in that way, if I look at across the country, 2 lakh POS machines are there through which farmers are buying fertilizers. And Coromandel is the second largest phosphatic fertilizer. We have intense penetration across the country. So if you look at this from supply point of view, we have around more than 8,000 dealers, and through these retailers POS machine we are supplying. And across the country, the total district 706 to 718, out of this 200, almost 16 or 17 district where you don't have the relayed notifications for taking your material by rail. So this is a huge challenge, how I will keep my material in those districts, or there are certain areas where the materials are not reaching, or if you have to reach, so many handling is there. When so many handling is there, there is a spillage of material, there is a wastage of material. When we have different segments, like we have trade segment, we have institution segments. Through trade we are selling, through institution we are reaching to the farmers. Now the FPOs, this is I look at the FPOs as an institution. This institution will help the farmers in terms of supply side as well as the output side, right? When I look at the supply side, if FPOs, wherever in the block level, FPOs, right now we have a lot of connection with the FPOs and also the promoters of the FPOs. The FPOs, if they have that agri infrastructure in terms of godown, then I can take material, whether Coromandel or IFCO, anybody can take material from the railhead to those locations, which is be closer to the farmers, right? And whenever farmers want material as per their requirements, they will come and collect the materials. So from my perspective, it is a huge value addition in the supply chain itself to serve the farmers better. Number one. Number two, the all FPOs, they talk about, or everybody talks about that organic fertilizers. Today, it is a huge challenge in terms of organic fertilizer. If you look at the price versus the logistic cost is very high. And if I have so many buffers, then the farmers ultimately, it will reach at a very high cost. Number one. Number two, the so-called whatever the channels are there, they don't like to keep the organic in a big way, because it is a lot of other parameter or characteristics of the organization that bars the so-called channels to keep these materials. If I keep the material closer to the market through FPOs, then farmers can buy it, the moisture content would not be dried up, and it will be useful for the farmers. So this, to that extent, also I see the FPO is another segment or capability building in the supply chain itself to serve the farmer better. And all the output depends on how the inputs are going into the farmers in the farming. In the entire, if I look at the framework of the supply chain, the supply side, then farmers, farming, processing, harvesting, then it is going to the either so-called retail, modern retail chain, or to the directly to the consumers. So if I am not able to manage this input side properly, the entire chain will be disturbed, and the agricultural value chain will be disturbed. So here is a huge role in terms of FPOs having the agri infrastructure in terms of having go down. Whether they will be custodian and somebody else would be custodian doesn't matter, but they will influence the farmers. They will help the farmers in choosing the fertilizer. Not only fertilizer, even in the seed, most of the time you'll see the availability of the seed is a very challenging factor. Last year, when you have looked at the COVID situation, the packaging industry itself is a problem. It was not able to supply the seed. In terms of our fertilizer also, supplying the fertilizer during that COVID period, it was a huge challenge. If I had kept the material over there, then during this Kharif period or whenever the requirements are there in the farmers, they can take it to the, come to the FPOs and they can buy this thing. So from my perspective, it is not any other conflicting channel. Rather, it is a supporting, complementing channel to the entire government or any fertilizer companies or agri input companies to help the farmers, to give the satisfaction to the farmers. That is from my side.
Yeah. Thank you, Kalidas Pramanikji. So we'll now move on to Pinakan Daveji for the first round. Pinakanji, you're new to the whole ecosystem, I should say, the Bombay Stock Exchange, into certain particular turmeric and other commodities that you're getting into now. One is, what are the strategies that you're using to promote this amongst the FPO? That is one. The second one, as NCDX had mentioned, Alinji, a critical aspect is with regard to assaying services. Many farmers, the problem even today, even with regard to the new farm laws, is how many farmers are willing to go into assaying services. They are used to providing mixed products, and that's how they're still with the dalal, you know. So ensuring that they come into assaying grade A, B, C, and then they get into the platform. That's the only way it's going to work. So how are you doing this? The promotion and the mindset change with farmers.
Thank you, Padmananji, for having us here, giving us an opportunity, to keep our things and to showcase what BSE is doing currently. Thank you for having me with this elite panel. Coming to your question, to give you a background of what BSE has been doing. So we've got the approval from the regulators to launch our commodity segment from 1st of October 2018. And we have launched our commodity segment by launching precious metals on our segment, while launching gold and silver. Going ahead, the intent at BSE has been, to add more value to the existing ecosystem, and the dynamism has been a very integral part of our markets. Markets have been very, very dynamic in its nature, and it keeps on evolving itself. And with this dynamism, FPOs have become a very, very integral part and important part of today's market. So be it a stakeholder, be it a trader, be it an adatya, जो हम लोग बोलते हैं regular language में, या be it an FPO or be it an importer, an exporter, be it an agri commodity, these people play a very, very important role in the entire value chain of the ecosystem. We at BSE firmly believe in educating the masses and creating that awareness. So we have launched a turmeric contract last year amidst the lockdown, and we've been able to do various webinars in this one span of lockdown, and we've been able to do deliveries up to 440 metric tons on our platform to make it more popular, make it more feasible and make it more better amongst the stakeholders. Because we talk a lot about the participation on FPO by a trader, but we believe that most important thing is looking at the cost also, which is involved for a trader to hedge himself or for an FPO to come and participate on the exchange platform. So various we've been working out on various strategies as far as getting the participation of FPOs are concerned. We've been educating these FPOs. So during the last 1 year, we've educated more than 100 FPOs for various agri commodities like cotton and turmeric as well. In this process, we are also focusing on new building the ecosystem in a very better way by launching new agri commodities. So we have launched almond to our commodity exchange, and in a span of less than a year, we have launched almond on in the month of June 2020, and within the short span of time, we've been able to handle more than 147,000 kgs of physical deliveries of almond, which has happened on the exchange platform. So, the urge, the hunger is there from the traders fraternity or from the importer or the exporter to come and participate. The most important aspect here is the awareness which needs to be created. And I must really congratulate Sanumati and the platform like ET Summit, which is a very unique platform in terms of, educating the FPOs, the farmers, so that they can come in one roof and make themselves aware about the benefits that one can avail. जो benefits है यहाँ पर एक exchange के platform पर आकर कैसे खुद को बचा सकते हैं, कैसे deliveries दे सकते हैं. We have to name a few benefits. We've waived our assaying charges, warehousing charges, because here these are we've seen that these become a very important part when a FPO is considering to take or participate on the exchange platform. So to make it more better, we've waived the warehousing charges for FPOs and for the stakeholders to come and use the platform, so that more and more FPOs can come in, more and more people, the stakeholders can come in and use the platform to give anti-deliveries and to hedge the risk. So this is how we intend to go ahead with a few other commodities as well. So the intent is very clear, to build a sustainable ecosystem, a model which is adding more value to the existing ecosystem, and also ensure that it is very, very economical, or we intend to make it affordable for each and every stakeholder who is there in a part as a part of the ecosystem.
Thank you, Pinakanji. Now we'll come back again to Alim Mukherjee ji. One question, Alinji, to you is, we as Grant Thornton also, I remember that we had personally worked with hundreds of FPOs, linking them up with NCDX. We got a Best Partner Award too. But what we find is, to the best of my knowledge, 100 ton, 200 ton के ऊपर गया नहीं है. So even an FPO who's doing 2,000 ton or 3,000 tons a year, why is it that it's not upscaling to the extent required? Is there some support mechanism required, some credit instrument? What is it as per the futures market particularly?
So, Padmanabh, you're absolutely right. It's quite stark that 100, 200 ton, 300 ton tak hota hai. But let me then ask you a back question, is that if you look at the landholding size, right, and individual marketable surplus from a farming, each farming unit, then to aggregate वो 200 ton aggregate करने के लिए भी, I will give you a concrete example. Let's take chana. Chana का productivity maybe on an average is 1 ton per hectare.
Yes.
Actually, it's lower than that. I'm putting it higher, 1 ton per hectare. अगर हम 1 ton hectare लेते हैं, तो अगर और average land holding अगर 1 hectare, 1.5 hectare के आसपास है, तो to accumulate or aggregate 200 ton, you need to speak with 200 farmers at least. So whether the FPO has the wherewithal to do that, that's point number one. Point number two, whether those 200 farmers, or because to aggregate 200 ton, you may need to talk to 500 farmers or 300 farmers, because some of them has to agree and some of them won't agree. ना अगर उसको एग्रीगेट करना है तो इसका मतलब आपको वो 200-300 किसानों के पास पहुंचना पड़ेगा, पहली बात। दूसरी बात यह है कि अगर आप पहुंच भी गए, हर कोई किसान एक भाव में राजी नहीं हो सकता है, तो you have to make them agree to one single price, because as an FPO you cannot pay one farmer X and one farmer minus X or plus X, right? So you have to announce a price. So वो प्राइस अनाउंसमेंट का इशू है। अगर आप मान लीजिए ये किसानों को आपने राजी भी कर लिया, तो वो 200 टन इकट्ठा करने के लिए आपको कैपिटल चाहिए। वो कैपिटल आपके बैंक में है या आपको लोन लेना है? सो द लोन लेना है, वेदर टू टेक लोन, डू यू हैव अ कोलैटरल, is it an asset based loan, or like maybe Samannati which is trying to do is to create a
Value chain finance.
secured lending system.
Yeah.
So I think these are the few challenges which comes out. The second point is that when we see that some of these issues are resolved, and if we go towards, let's say, Bihar and the Jivika model, what they have done, there these FPOs have traded thousands of tons of Makkah on the exchange platform. They have deposited more than 3,000 tons in cases. Last year, more than 1,500 tons. So what it means, they had the handholding capacity, they had the institutional backing, they had the financial backing to do that, the training and awareness, and they are so so if you progress towards that, so that can happen. The fourth and one of the most important point I would like to highlight here, I think it's a very good platform, is that if you need to look at the physical side of it, all these challenges which I talked about will definitely needs to be handled. But there is another very simple tool which we are now targeting the FPOs to use that. So what is the major problem? One of the major problem is that, can I get a right price for my produce and do not have to go to a distress sell at the time of harvest? तो अगर मेरे को मार्केटिंग कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मिल जाता है, अगर मेरे को कॉन्ट्रैक्ट फार्मिंग मिल जाता है, अगर मेरे को बैक टू बैक ग्रोइंग ऑर्डर मिल जाता है, दिस फैंटास्टिक, राइट? But it's not possible in all the crop, all the time, all the season. So what are the other alternatives? You have now classic product, what we call the put option, right? So if you as a FPO or as a farmer collectives, if you look at the put option, what it does, it allows you to lock in your price just after your planting or the time of planting. So that means you know what is the cost you are going to incur in your production system. You know what is the cost you are going to incur if you take those produce after harvesting to a market. So you know all your cost because you have been doing this for long. Your shareholders are ये वो कर रहे हैं काफी सालों से, right? Within maybe a range, you know these expenses. Now, अगर आपको expenses मालूम है और आप revenue block कर सकते हो with only 5% of the revenue which you are looking for from your harvest, put option, buying a put option is a fantastic way to do it. Now, what it does is that you don't need whole capital of the 10 ton or 200 ton or 1,000 ton to put in. What you need is a 5 to 6% of capital to pay as a premium to lock in your price. The another biggest advantage other than this capital savings part is that अगर मान लीजिए भाव ऊपर के तरफ चला गया, and of course in a normal futures market there is always a challenge that if the prices go up, I lose because I am hedged. I only will get the price which I have locked at, right? Though I have protected the downside, but upside if it happens, जो कि अभी मान लीजिए सरसों में या चना में या सोयाबीन में हो रहा, I won't get the benefit. But the put options basically allows you to do that. You don't have to deliver on the exchange. If the prices go up, you simply go and sell it in the marketplace. So your total expenses includes your premium expenses. So if you are spending, let's say 3,000 रुपए पर क्विंटल आपका खर्चा है चना के लिए या सरसों के लिए प्रोडक्शन के लिए, आप इसमें 200-300 रुपए और ऐड अगर कर लेते हैं, तो that becomes your total expenses. So now you are assured that you have locked in your price. You don't have to worry about your buyer. You don't have to worry about कि पैसा आपके पास आएगा कि नहीं आएगा. You don't have to worry about mark to market जो futures normal position में होता है. So buying put option actually gives you much more freedom in terms of locking in your price, guaranteeing a revenue, and so you are then not required the large amount of working capital which you may require as an FPO to aggregate 1,000 tons or 2,000 tons,
Yes.
as your primary question was.
Yeah.
So, I think there are these are the tools which we did a fantastic proof of concept last year with Chana and Sarso, and we hope this year we are going to make much more inroads with put options with many other crops.
Thank you, Alinji. In fact, you highlighted both the Jivika model, which is a learning for us also. Next case study would be on that. And I remember Samunati was the most aggressive financier in our Maharashtra World Bank project. So it was not Punji ki kami nahi thi. Like you say, the number of active farmers in an FPO, which we don't speak about much, is something that could also be a cause for concern. Thank you, Alinji. Now, a quick round with Akashji on how are you differentiated from other players in the system, in the ecosystem. 1 minute, please. In 1 minute. Sorry, but time,
No, I agree. I understand. So very broadly, see, we are not a agri brand company. We are a technology company. What has happened in the country is in the perishable segment, you have a lot of distribution players because perishables is a function of distribution. There has to be zero perishability so that the farmers get the maximum output, right? In non-perishables, it is not about a zero function game. So in most of the commodities, you can actually wait and watch and actually let the market choose when you want to sell, right? So we are basically providing that eligibility and that visibility to the FPOs as well as to the farmers on a daily basis. What is the pricing of this commodity, of which quality, and at whatever point the FPOs can actually choose to sell or not to sell. Now, this is in contrast to what happens generally in a non-perishables market. And the entire supply chain post that, including the processing, including the market linkages, of course, is taken care of by family. So we are not a brand, like you were mentioning, there are ITCs and multiple other companies which are doing this. So we are actually not in that game. We are basically suppliers to a lot of big brands which are in these commodities. So we basically take care of the farm to wholesale market supply chain, and we do that by using the technology platform.
Yeah. Beautiful. We have several players there in this field, but I'm sure you will be one up on the rest. Yeah. So thank you very much. Now let us come to Kalidas ji, Coromandel again. One is with regarding to crop advisory, which is now provided by almost all input manufacturers worldwide. Yara down, Yara upwards, or it could be even UPL in pesticides, Syngenta. Everyone is their own technology apps, their own crop advisory services, their own farm intelligence centers at the farm level. What is your opinion on this? The need and how it can complement the weaknesses in the extension system? Thank you.
Yes. So just before answering that, I'd like to set the context. Context in the sense that if you look at the year after year, the farm holding size is going down. It is declining. Water base is declining. Right? 80% of the entire farmers' population, they are holding less than 1 hectare land, right? So basically, these 80% farmers, they need the services, the farm extension services. And across India, if you look at 1 million farmers, how I will reach these farmers and give them right input so that they can better yield and the quality produces. Now, all the output marketeers, they specify this kind of quality they want, right? Right now, government is talking about soil health. Yes, plus private is also doing soil health. And they are giving respective information to the farmers. Like in Coromandel, we have NutriClinic. That NutriClinic is not a selling point. It is a service point. We are giving services to the farmers. Now, question here it is that how we'll give the integrated nutrient INM to the farmers. For that, what we think that there should be public-private partnerships. It should not be like when I'm going as an agri-input company, I have certain objectives. When somebody, Mr. Allen is coming, he has certain objectives. The man, Samunnati, is giving credit. He has certain objectives. So everybody is giving services from their objectives or purpose point of view. So if all this gets together or this kind of partnership forms and give the services to the farmers, like from organic biofertilizer, then your chemical fertilizer, sorry, then farm mechanized company, they will give what sorts of technology is required. Now we are talking about precision technology. So for precision technology, for particular crop, it needs particular services. And these services or inputs based on what the output companies want. Like ITC in Guntur, they are looking for chili. So we have tied up with the ITC and jointly we are giving services to the farmers. Pepsi, in the eastern region, if you look at Pepsi, they are procuring the potato, contract farming of the potatoes. So for their specific quality, what kind of inputs required, what kind of technology required, what kind of services required, if together we can give it, then only the farmers will get benefit. And FPO is the institution, they can congregate all these players together and give integrated services to the farmers. Then only it will help for these 80% farmers what I am talking about. And it will give us overall agricultural economy will go up, farmers' livelihood will also go up.
Thank you, Kalidas Pramanik-ji. Madam Jasmeer-ji, 1 minute from your side on what are the critical success factors for an FPO to be linked with global value chains, put it that way, effectively.
Yeah, and very simply, while I've been reflecting on all the inputs coming in from the different panel speakers right now, we've spoken a lot about services and especially now with the previous point made, I really thank you for raising that part about public-private, sort of collaborations. One thing that when you say this relationship between FPOs and buyers or global supply chains, in IDH, we call this relationship a service delivery model. Right. So if FPOs need certain services, farmers need services of different kinds, who is delivering these services? Is it a combination of actors or is it perhaps one trader, one buyer, etc. that's channelizing it? The crux of it is the model itself. Right now, we're not talking about the FPO alone or the trader buyer, but we're saying is this model in which services reach the FPO, is that itself economically viable? Or is it effective? Is it efficient? And how do we build that? So if you want to build a service, delivery model, which is effective and efficient, we need to understand our farmers. And that's already been raised. I don't want to repeat those points. But we can't assume that all farmers, small farmers with less hectares, that they all are the same. You still need to segment and understand what their respective needs are in terms of services. How are they structured? And for the organizations, especially those who are involved in providing these services, is it an economically viable relationship that they are building with these FPOs? And I think that's one of the key, sort of aspects that we look at when we work with different traders and buyers to build this relationship. How do we build models which at the end of the day should at least be a break even for different parties who are bringing the services together, that the farmers also see a return on investment in that they will continue, they feel the need to continue to use these services in that sense. And in the most evolved cases that we see, farmers and FPOs have even graduated to paying for the services which were earlier subsidized or grant funded if there was enough value that they saw in them. All of it leads to the same conclusion that it has to become economically viable, right? So as long as our models are dependent greatly on either grant funds or subsidies, those are important to develop, incubate, and accelerate the models. Ultimately, the FPOs should themselves see value in a strengthened relationship with the buyer in terms of longer term, more preferential contracts, or more efficiency in their operations. And buyers should also see the same value in terms of improved sourcing, better quality, of raw materials or commodities that they are buying. And in that, the real value should be generated in terms of the sustainability of that relationship. Those are the, I think, quick points from me.
Thank you, Jasmeer-ji. Pinakin Dave-ji, one question. Will horticulture ever be coming into your ambit?
So basically, SEBI, the regulator has specified a list of around 91 commodities which are allowed or which can be launched on the exchange platform. And the intent at BSE has always been, to try and give or add new commodities to the ecosystem. The way we launched Almond, which is not launched anywhere across the globe, right? So we are the only exchange where Almond is traded, Almond futures contract is traded, and deliveries are happening in such a huge quantum as well. We are absolutely open to the idea with the list of the 91 commodities that are approved by the regulators. Over and above that, in case if there is any commodity that the stakeholders feel, or if the market participants feel, we are always ready to hear it out and take it to the regulators to for the approvals or to grant us the approvals. So for me, I would put it in that way, that the need is there for new commodities to be added in the system, and with the space being bigger and wider, it is always better to add new commodities and add more value to the existing ecosystem.
Just two questions. It's open for all the experts. We are absolutely on time. So one question is, how many of us, all you experts, are working with government schemes? Coromandel Intag had mentioned PPP. There is a PPP IAD, Public-Private Partnership for Integrated Agriculture Development, which many firms are leveraging to provide crop advisory and their inputs also to farmers. But is a Coromandel aware of this? Or is anyone else twinning their interventions towards farmers and the agribusiness sector with government schemes, or is it not? Is there a disjunct? That is one question. The second question is with regard to marketing intelligence. Right from the Asian Development Bank to the World Bank, they got billion-dollar programs to set up a market intelligence cell across India, like the USDA does. Market information from their experts here throughout the world on commodity prices, what is supply demand gap, and it all goes to America, and accordingly decisions are made, policy, pricing, subsidies, etc. So a market intelligence cell for India, a worldwide market intelligence cell with APIDA and with the Ministry of Agriculture constituting it. So market intelligence and twinning with government schemes. Anybody, if we could take two good responses, is it really happening? What are your suggestions on this? Yes, please, Alinji.
So, I may put my 2 cents worth on the market intelligence side of it. So, of course, everybody, the global trade, they look at the USDA report, production reports and stock reports and export reports to take their trading and decisions. But if you look at from the Indian context, the intelligence comes from data point. So the question is, do we have the first level data points which are verifiable and ground truthed to that extent to take that informed decision? So I think we need to, and I think Government of India is doing a lot, and with the current startups and the tools which we have in our hand today, a lot things will change and very quickly. Then definitely the data points will generate enough intelligent report to take decisions. The second issue will come in, I think, which is very correlated with the intelligence, is that what I'm going to do with that. It is not an intelligence if I'm not being able to take any actions against that, right? It's just a piece of information. If chana in Delhi is costing at 7,000 rupees and in Indore I'm producing at 5,000 rupees, can I access that market? Do I have the infrastructure? Do I have the knowledge or the logistical support to get this material smoothly? I think new farm laws are also working towards that direction. So I think intelligence per se is not going to do anything if you do not have the rest of the ecosystem in place. But I'm sure there is tremendous amount of push, 1 lakh crore of AIF and roads we know. So I think we will reach much faster than we expect and anticipate.
Thank you, Alinji. The next question and the last question was with regard to twinning with government schemes. For example, the PPIID, as I had mentioned. It is open to anybody, not just Pramanikji. Are we really twinning with government schemes, or is there a disjunct?
Actually, what is happening, the government schemes and still the awareness level at the farmers level is very less. So corporates or agri-input companies or those who are in this segment, they can create this kind of awareness level, and government and the companies, they should work together to solve the common purpose. If it like soil health, government is doing huge job on this, and reaching this information to the farmers level, it is a challenge. So how here the private companies, those who are operating in a particular geography level, to help to reach this information to at the farmers level. So these are the, we can identify 2-3 areas where we can work together and reach to the farmers. Because you know that some progressive farmers, they have very good networking, they have the access and they get the benefit. But where the small or marginal farmers, they don't have any ideas about this. For this, it is like micro level meeting or micro level job we have to do, or the government, along with the government can assign that these are the areas you do, these are the areas certain companies XYZ will do. This is how this can be spread. Otherwise, or FPOs has a very big role in this. The challenge in the FPO today is the governance part. Still, if you go the real fact, if you go to the village levels, hardly the farmers, they know about this FPO concept. Like in Andhra and Telangana, Coromandel, we have tied up with some few FPOs, and we are giving all sorts of services. Sometimes we call the government officers also over there and disseminating all this information, right? But still, the number of FPOs and the members of farmers in the FPOs, it will take time. Yes. So until and unless it comes at a particular stage, it is still remain challenge.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, ladies, lady and gentlemen. It was beautiful, and it was an honor for me to also moderate. I think one thing the farmer can be satisfied is all the global players are willing to support them. Input, service provider, output, market. But again, a critical thing which Aleem-ji had also highlighted, and Pramanik-ji also, is the governance and the efficacy of FPOs. Now, FPOs itself, numbers are very few. Even 10,000 FPOs will not cover more than 60 lakh farmers. And out of these 60 lakh farmers, as Aleem-ji had mentioned, how many are active members? So that is an issue we need to ensure while implementing formation and promotion of FPOs, to ensure genuine FPOs, active, dynamic, involvement, governance, and then work on big scale. Thank you all.